This story now, Gun Free SA says they're preparing to take legal action against the police for illegal guns sold to criminals. It's claiming damages for deaths and injuries resulting from corrupt and negligent firearm management. The suit follows an admission by senior SAPS officer Christian Prinsloo, who confessed to selling over 2,000 guns in police stores to gang leaders on the Cape Flats. Let's speak to eNCA now from Action Society. Mr. Cameron, as far as you know, is the police leadership doing anything to stop this deadly practice?
Good morning. No, unfortunately not enough. Between about 2007 up until just before 2020, the police had lost over 26,000 firearms. In 2019 alone, the police lost over 10 million rounds of ammunition. So no, they're not doing enough. We don't see real consequences for cops that lose or supply firearms to criminals. Chris Prinsloo, as you correctly said, was found to have supplied over 9,000 police firearms to gangs in the Cape Flats, and those have been linked to various crimes across the country. I think the problem is that he took the fall for an entire team of people that worked with this. So unfortunately, not enough is being done.
So unfortunate. But then now, with this class action suit, many have said it's been long overdue, and that in this instance, you had Mr. Prinsloo being charged with fraud, corruption and racketeering. But now that we know that over 1,066 murders were committed with those firearms, shouldn't there be a situation where more charges are brought against him?
I think yes. I think it should be considered that way, but it also must be considered who the other cops were that are still involved or that were involved during that time. But the class action suit would also have to include the Minister of Police as well as the National Commission and even some of the provincial or divisional commissioners. I think the question around this is rather the organization that is bringing the application, because Gun Free SA were the ones that campaigned for people to hand in their firearms to the police, and most of us said don't do that because the police are going to lose the firearms. And now that they did lose the firearms, now they want to take the police to court. So I'm getting confused here. We told them don't allow the police to take the guns, but now that it's happened, they want to sue the police.
And that's actually what I was about to ask you, that have they not made a strong case for those that have refused to surrender their firearms, to say, just purely based on you bringing this case to our attention, then it means we need to keep our guns with us for now, because when we surrender these guns, they're sold to criminals who then kill us.
Spot on. I think you've actually said it better than I could ever say it. We've come to a point where we really cannot trust the South African Police Service to look after our firearms or our property when we hand it in. Let me give you an example. If we look at the EFF so-called shutdown of 2 days ago, and I know in most people's eyes it failed, there was incredible police presence. Why can't we see the same enthusiasm when it comes to firearm trade in South Africa, illegal firearm trade? Why don't we see the same with organized crime? So I think you're spot on. I think we've come to a point where we can't trust the police with that. Not saying all cops are bad, no, but unfortunately a few rotten apples spoils the entire basket. And this makes it very challenging. So I think you're right, and it's going to make it very, very challenging in the future. If we were to see another amnesty period announced in South Africa, I do not want to even think about the consequences of those guns that are going to end up back on the streets in the hands of criminals.
And it's so unfortunate. I'm glad you mentioned that there are good police officers who honestly get discouraged every time they hear of what their colleagues are doing, because it paints them with the same brush. But what kind of process would ensure guns in police custody never find themselves in the streets? Should they be discarded immediately? What exactly should happen?
So I think there are a few things that we need to consider. Firstly, we're still policing in a very old-fashioned way when it comes to the discarding or the destruction of firearms that were handed in, or criminal firearms that were seized by the police. So we only have one destruction site in Vereniging in Gauteng. So that means all of these firearms from across the country need to be transported there, which is already a high risk. On top of that, we don't have scales to weigh these big freights that need to be transported. So when this truck of cargo, which is a shipment of, let's say, rifles or pistols or any firearms, it gets transported. But if one or two fall off, it doesn't get weighed on the way. So it's very easy to actually allow a firearm to go missing here and there because it doesn't make much of a difference to the total weight of the freight that's being moved, and it can easily be hidden. The issue as well is it doesn't get weighed when it leaves the original site. So you can easily commit fraud with a piece of paper or a permit or something where you've written the wrong information. When it arrives and is weighed, there's no reference to say how much it was. So we say that we should have destruction plants in more places in the country that are obviously strictly managed. We say that there should be scales at stations before it leaves the station. That vehicle needs to be weighed with the entire shipment, and obviously when it enters the destruction site, the same thing. Those are some of the suggestions. Obviously, I would say that we need to privatize the amnesty. If there is amnesty periods, private sector needs to be involved in safeguarding, because we clearly see that gun shops in South Africa do far better work in terms of safeguarding firearms than what the police do. But obviously we know that the government would try and counter it. Just as a matter of interest, if we speak to gangsters in the Cape Flats, if you read books like Give Us More Guns by Mark Shaw, it tells us that the choice of firearm by gangsters in the Cape Flats alone is the Z88 police pistol. They call it a Zulu, that's the slang for it, and they've chosen that that's their handgun of choice. So that shows you for how long the police have actually been complicit in supplying firearms to gangsters.
It's honestly so unfortunate, because we have entrusted them with our safety, and then to find out that people prefer their pistols and they're willingly, some of them, handing them over is honestly very concerning. But Ian, thank you very much for your time this morning. That was Ian Cameron from Action Society.